Hello everyone, long time no see. I've been moving house in the past few weeks. That's why I wasn't able to do any programs. I hope from now on things will go back to normal and get even better. Today let me talk about a very important move of the US as well as the reactions from inside and outside of China. Several media outlets including New York Times, Wall Street Journal, and Reuters all reported on July 15th that, quote, the Trump administration is considering a sweeping ban on travel to the United States by members of the Chinese Communist Party and their families. The New York Times report says that the presidential proclamation, still in draft form, could also authorize the United States government to revoke the visas of party members and their families who are already in the country, leading to their expulsion. Some proposed language is also aimed at limiting travel to the United States by members of the People's Liberation Army and executives at state-owned enterprises, though many of them may likely also be party members. This news immediately sent shockwaves throughout China, and the reactions from Chinese Communist Party, the CCP's high-ranking officials and ordinary netizens are two extremes. While CCP spokeswoman Hua Chunying said that if this information is true, the US is bluntly choosing to oppose 1.4 billion Chinese people and to stand at the opposite side of 1/5 of the world's population. Many ordinary Chinese citizens rejoice over this news. Some say, bravo, such great news, I'm all for it. Some say, I was moved to tears. Some say it's better to freeze their assets too. Some say long overdue, hurry up and enforce it right away. In the meantime, searching for quit the CCP, how to withdraw from the party, procedure of quitting the CCP in Chinese language suddenly jumped for more than 100% on the internet. Data from Google Trends shows that the search happened both inside and outside of China. Commentators started to discuss whether it is feasible for the US to enforce such a policy. Before discussing whether it is feasible, I'd like to talk about how I look at this potential move first. Overall, I agree with many Chinese netizens. This is long overdue and will be a very wise and effective move that will benefit not only America, but also Chinese people and the entire world. Why do I say so? Well, in my last program, I interviewed a businessman from Hong Kong who was seeking for the US to designate the CCP as a criminal organization. If we examine the history of the CCP, we will find it's a history of mass killing. Every several years, or about 10 years, the CCP would launch a different political campaign to target a different group in the society. The CCP is responsible for the deaths of at least 80 million Chinese people. If we count the unborn babies killed by the CCP's one family, one child policy, there were 400 million more lives taken by the CCP. If that sort of numbers are still not shocking and terrible enough, we just have nearly 600,000 people died from the COVID-19 or the CCP virus worldwide. And that number doesn't include Chinese people, as we don't know the real number in China yet. From whichever angle we look at this issue, CCP is a criminal organization, a terrorist organization. It is no less evil than Hitler's Nazi Party. If we have been tracking down Nazi members who were responsible for what they did during the World War II, from every corner of the world, we have justifications to do the same to the CCP members who are responsible for the losses of lives and of hundreds of millions of innocent people. The New York Times cited Judy Blanchett, a China scholar at the Center for Strategic and International Studies, by saying that going after the entire party membership is like China sanctioning all Republicans because of frustrations with Trump. To this, I'd like to say this is exactly where the West got the CCP and thus their China policy wrong all the time from the very beginning. Robert O'Brien, the assistant to the President for National Security Affairs, rightfully reflected on U.S.-China policy in his recent speech in Phoenix, Arizona. He said, quote, "We could have not been more wrong, and this miscalculation is the greatest failure of American foreign policy since the 1930s. How did we make such a mistake? How did we fail to understand the nature of the Chinese Communist Party? The answer is simple, because we did not pay heed to the CCP's ideology. Instead of listening to what CCP leaders were saying and reading what they wrote in their key documents, we closed our ears and our eyes. We believe what we want to believe, that the party members were communist in name only." While I agree with O'Brien's points, I'd like to add that we cannot view or treat the CCP as if it were a normal political party like any other political parties in democratic countries. No, the CCP is not a normal political party. It is a criminal gang, a terrorist organization, and an evil cult. If we check its ideological basis, its killing history, its crimes, the crimes it has committed, its ways of handling things in the real world, and its ultimate goal of destroying mankind. Treating it like a normal political party is the biggest mistake the West made in the past 40+ years when dealing with China. There's a famous saying in the West that "fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me." If, after suffering such great human life and economic losses because of the pandemic, we still cannot wake up from the illusion we once harbored towards the CCP, we should really feel ashamed of ourselves. If we correctly regard the CCP as a criminal and terrorist organization, it is just natural for us to ban its members from entering the US or any other countries. A travel ban will send a very strong signal to all the CCP and non-CCP members. For ordinary Chinese citizens who long for a free country, they will definitely welcome this move. Over 360 million Chinese have already made a stance by publishing their declarations to withdraw from the CCP and its related organizations, including the Youth League and the Young Pioneers. For those who have not joined the CCP but are considering or plan to join, they might change their minds. For those who are already party members, they might consider quitting it. Overall, this policy, once announced, will greatly shake CCP's foundation. Hasn't it always boasted that it has over 90 million members as a justification to stay in power? If that number is greatly reduced, CCP's foundation to rule the country will be shaken from the very root. Another question is it doable or feasible? How can the US know who are CCP members and who are not? Yes, it is indeed very difficult for the US to track down every single one of the 92 million CCP members. But we can start from the top level ones, such as members of the Political Bureau of the Central Committee of the CCP, and such as all those 162 members of the Standing Committee of the National People's Congress of China who voted for the national security law for Hong Kong, which killed Hong Kong's autonomy. According to Chinese financial commentator Caijing Lengyan, over 70% of the children of CCP officials and or above the divisional level are studying in the West. We can also start from these people. Many high-ranking CCP members, as well as very famous public figures, send all their children and wives and transfer all the money they got from corruption to the West, but still attack the West recklessly all day long. Some of them famously said, being anti-American is a job, and going to US is my choice of way of life. Even CCP spokeswoman Hua Chunying, who virtually attacks America and the West every day, has sent her daughter to the US. It was reported that Hua Chunying and her husband purchased a property in the Bay Area of San Francisco. Hua explained to CCP's disciplinary committee that she bought this house for her daughter Fan Hua, who was studying in the US, to live in. The fact that Hua bought a house in San Francisco was tipped off to the CCP's disciplinary committee in May 2019, just before she was going to be appointed as the director of CCP's Foreign Ministry Information Department. It was said that CCP's previous spokesman Geng Shuang's daughter is also studying in New York. This was revealed by a Chinese netizen on Twitter. This is to say that as long as the US adopts such a policy, people, especially Chinese people who know the facts, may start to offer tips and to help the US government to identify high-profile CCP members and their families. If the US government really wants to enforce such a policy, it can also track down CCP members by connecting public information from government websites, reports, and other records and documents. Some people argue that some ordinary, especially low-level CCP members have not done much evil and that they shouldn't be targeted. It is indeed true that not all the CCP members are the same. Some must have done much less evil than the others. However, by being a member of a criminal organization, one becomes part of it and voluntarily supports the criminal organization and gives it more authority and power to do evil. The US can also choose to give a period of time, for example, 1 or 3 months, for ordinary CCP members to publicly denounce their membership with their real names before officially launch the ban. This gives the majority of the CCP members a choice to abandon the evil party and to join force with the free world. As a matter of fact, after publishing the 9 commentaries on the Communist Party, which gives very detailed and in-depth coverage and analysis of CCP's historic crimes and its evil nature in 2004, the Chinese edition of the Epoch Times has set up a Quit CCP or 退党 in Chinese website for people to post their declarations to quit the CCP and its related organizations, Youth League and the Young Pioneers. From the end of 2004 up to now, over 360 million people already used this website to publish their declarations with either their real or alias names. While using alias names may not have a legal effect, it is nonetheless a very important process for the Chinese people to start to recognize the fact that the CCP is evil and to take a stance against it. We can call it a spiritual awakening process. It is a very important process, as actions always follow people's minds and hearts. When people's understanding about the CCP changes, their attitude and actions will also change. If the US really starts to impose a travel ban on CCP members, it is, however, a very significant legal move. Using alias names to quit the CCP will, of course, be not good enough. So real names with their photos should be required from then on. In conclusion, the most important battle for mankind now is the battle between the specter of communism and the free world. Identifying the problem is the first step for the free world to win. In this sense, a travel ban on CCP members is a good start towards the right direction. That's all for today. Thanks for watching. Truth saves lives. Please do subscribe to my channel and share it. Thank you. See you next time.